Welcome everyone to this meeting of the virtual IMS user group. Thank you for joining us. I'm Trevor Eddles. I'm CEO of iTech Limited. We're a mainframe consultancy, analysis and technical authoring organisation. And we're responsible for the content on the virtual IMS website, and we also produce the newsletters. And that website can be found at itech-ed.com/virtual IMS, and we also look after the virtual CICS user group as well. So first of all, let me run through the agenda for this meeting. As usual, most of the meeting will be taken up with a presentation, and today our guest presenter is Haley Fung. She's IBM Offering Manager for IMS, and her talk is called 4 Paths to Digital Transformation in IMS. And a copy of the slides from this presentation should be on our website later on today, certainly by tomorrow. And by the way, if you've missed any of our previous meetings, you can download copies of the presentations from our website, and you can also listen again. They're all recorded, so there'll be a link on our resources page. Following Haley's presentation and any questions you have for her, we'll move on to the latest IMS news and latest IMS related articles and blogs. Feedback requests is there to remind me to ask you for your feedback about this virtual meeting. And then I'll give you the dates and times for the next couple of virtual meetings. So that's the plan. I'm anticipating that it will last for a little bit over an hour. Anyway, as I just said, today's presentation is from Haley Fung. Haley is the IBM Offering Manager for IMS and specialises in API, Java and DevOps. She drives product direction in building solutions for enterprise modernization and integration for IMS. Haley is a frequent presenter at global technical conferences. Her deep technical expertise and a passion and dedication for customers has helped many IMS customers to modernize and enhance their application infrastructures. So, Haley, I'd like to thank you very much for being with us today. And what I'd like to do now is pass control of the meeting over to you. So let me do that now.
Hello, everyone. Just to thank you, Trevor, for the introduction. Just to make sure that you guys hear me okay.
Yep, I can hear you fine, thank you.
Perfect. So first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to present today at the virtual IMS group, and I'm very happy to talk to you about, this is one of my favorite topic for my presentation in terms of how we can help you to modernize and your existing IMS assets and have it more usable, helping you to continue to drive your success in your company with IMS. Okay. As Trevor mentioned, I'm one of the offering manager in IBM, and specifically I am specialized in the area for modernization, things like API, Java and DevOps in IMS, and I also recently also pick up some responsibility in terms of our Ansible offering for System C, so I'm going to highlight at the end of my presentation as well. Okay, so let me get started. Right. So one of the, the key reason why we talk about modernization and transformation specifically is the drivers for having a successful, hybrid cloud environment to support our customers. We have seen pretty much the transformation and kind of the roadmap from a lot of customers, right, evolving from a traditional IT environment, meaning that you have a lot of on-prem resources like IMS is one of them, but it's now having to be able to work in an infrastructure and IT environment which is more hybrid in terms of you now may have services and infrastructure that is no longer on-prem, right? Though some of them may be on the public cloud, some of them may be on the private cloud. So how we can get your existing assets on the IBM Z platform, whether it's IMS, KICS, and DB2, to be able to more integrate it to all these resources now outside of the Z platform and could be on the cloud as well. The key point is to make sure that we keep the mainframe IBM Z to be openly connected. We're helping you to optimize your modern workload, helping you to transform what you have to making sure that you can still continue to drive the success, the workload, with the criteria of managed services, security, and the performance that you have on the system Z, and be able to integrate it with other services and application that is now outside of the System C platform, right? So we see a lot of customers go through this transformation. Some of them are focused on your existing business application workload. How can we transform those existing application, which could be, COBOL, PL1 assembler, have it more modern, have it be able to easier to manage and be able to integrate with application that is outside of your IBM Z environment. We also see, and this transformation is not just for the workload as well, right? A lot of transformation is talking about the whole ecosystem in terms of the environment, the infrastructure to support those applications, right? So we're talking about, things for automations per se. How can we drive your DevOps pipeline can be able to run faster, such that you can drive more changes delivered to your IBM Z platform in a faster way, and be able to leverage all these modern tools that your cloud platform and your distributed platform is being using, such that you can have a unified user experience in terms of managing your application, deploying the changes in an automated way. So how can we actually help you to keep your IMS modern, right? So one of the key message here is to embrace change. So a lot of times we talk to, especially with the IBM Z or IMS customers, they are reluctant to change just because the environment has been very stable. We know IMS is running well. We hardly had any problems. But when you introduce change, there's always a risk. So that's kind of the key thing is if you're not changing, but the kind of like all the application or infrastructure outside your IBM Z is changing, you will be hard to adapt, right? And so if you kind of wait longer, then when you have the need to change, the change will be bigger. So that's why we have been working a lot of solutions for the past decade, or actually almost 20 years, or even more, is to continue to look for a solution on helping you how to be able to embracing the change. What that means is, if there's a new infrastructure or application standard now is fully adapted in the distributed cloud platform, how will you be able to open up your existing IMS transaction and data and be able to adapt to it and be able to leverage what you have instead of having you to have a kind of like a major rewrite or migration and so forth. So with that said, it's very important to have IMS to remaining be open and connected. And that's why I call it an IMS in a connected mainframe world. And so in terms of having you to have the ability to have IMS, the data, your key data, right, and transaction to be connected, we want to make sure that we cover all these, key part of it, right? How can we keep it open and connected? How do we provide cognitive insight to your data? How can we support rapid provisioning, automation, and DevOps, and how you can be able to manage your application easier for long term, right? With some of these new solution, whether it's Java, whether it's APIs, whether it's SQL, JDBC, or using modern pipeline, using things like Ansible to help you in all the different areas. So in this presentation, I'm going to walk you through 4 different areas, or I call it the common modernization patterns that we have seen customers through the past 10 to 20 years that has been very successful at adopting, right? And I'm going to also talk to you about some of the new things that is coming and then we're working on to help you to continue with this journey. So the 4 areas I'm going to talk to you in this presentation are Java, API, DevOps and cloud, that is pretty much all the things about the infrastructures as code, automation as well as the open database. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with API. So API stand for basically application programming interface, right? It's not anything new. Everyone that write an application will know what API means. But in the context of today's world, API actually means something very special, right? API meaning that the ability for your application or data to be able to interact with other application or other server in a REST JSON API format, right? So that means that these API, right, these interface to existing application will be easily discoverable from the web, right? You can actually build a catalog to provide a list of all the API services to all your, backend transaction and so forth, right? And API become an industry federal standard for many of the new developers for building the application. They just go to a web catalog, look for a project service, get the information about how to call this API, and then they just pretty much write up an application, use that URL, and to invoke an API. So it is very important for in terms of how we can help you to open up your existing IMS transaction and data and be able to adopt these new programming paradigm. So one of the solutions that we actually provided from IBM, and this is already 5 years old solution or even more, is our ZeroS Connect solution, right? So ZeroS Connect is a separate product for IMS, but has been a very successful solution for helping our customers that able to leverage the existing transaction and data without change in most cases, and be able to present those transactions as an API that can be called by application outside of IMS, right? So when we built the ZeroS Connect solution, we learned from previous solution that we have developed. And for those of you who have been in this area, kind of especially for the modernization area for long, you probably have heard things like, Java, JCA, SOA, SOAP web services. All of those solutions are pretty much the industry, standard in the past to allow you to be able to call an applications in a more standardized, easy fashion so they don't have to worry about where those applications is actually running. So API right now is the new standard. And so when we actually build that ZeroS Connect solution to support API, we learn from the history, we learn from the past. So there are a couple key points about the ZeroS Connect solution. Number one is we build a solution that is specific for API. So we try to build a more lightweight, simple engine to actually help you to do the API work. And then we support multiple endpoints. So with one simple ZeroS Connect product or the server, you will be able to use the tooling that we provide to enable your backend resources on IBM Z, whether it is a IMS transaction, whether it's a Kix transaction, is pretty much going to be the same look and feel, the same experience. And so those are kind of like the key points, and the reason why I highlight is a lot of customers using the ZeroS Connect solution is not because of the technical perspective, right? It's really from a user perspective on how they can enable these IMS transaction and data in a much faster fashion and really lower the development cost. So in terms of the capability that we provide, and I'm just going to highlight a few here. So now, as of now, we actually provide 3 solutions or 3 areas in terms of how you can use IMS with ZeroS Connect. You can use ZeroS Connect by allowing API client to call into IMS, basically invoke existing IMS transaction. You can allow to use ZeroS Connect to be able to access your IMS data directly. without getting through any transaction. And then finally, we also have the solution that allowing your IMS application to act as a client and call out to external API. So this API can be on the cloud, can be on another platform, and can be developed in any languages, right? We're just going to be able to allow your IMS to go out to call that API and get a response back in the standard way. So a couple of charts just to highlight the details. As I mentioned, the orange boxes kind of represent the Zeus Connect is going to run on the mainframe. And so it allows you to have the connectivity to all the different backends. And these are just, just a few example. And from an IMS perspective, you can call IMS transaction and also call IMS data as well. And Zeus Connect will help you to generate the open standard API interfaces or what we call the Swagger doc, such that you'll be able to allow the client on the left-hand side to call your IMS transaction in a URL or in a REST JSON format. And Zeus Connect will help you to do all the transformation, all the connections that is being needed. So your IMS transaction is basically can be remain unchanged in most of the cases. The second function I want to mention is the access to IMS data. This is something brand new. We GA, I think, about 2 months ago. So now with the previously before the IMS database service provider support, we do allow you to access IMS data from Zeus Connect, but has to go through the IBM DVM product, the Data Virtualization Manager. So now with DVM, it's more like a supporting, aggregations of data model. But if you have the need just to access the IMS data in a simple fashion, now the IMS data based service provider is going to be shipped with Zeus Connect. So out of the box, you'll be able to allow API to come into IMS to Zeus Connect, and then Zeus Connect can execute some SQL statement that you predefine for your data access. So by utilizing the tooling that comes with Zeus Connect, you can select what data that you want to access by specifying some SQL statement. And then again, we will do the mapping, data transformation as needed. And then finally, that we have the third kind of feature with Zeus Connect is allowing you to have IMS to call out to external API. So you can see Zeus Connect by utilizing the API requester function that is shown on the left side of the screen. You can take a KICS transaction, IMS transaction, or just a basic CRS application and be able to call out to external RESTful endpoint. One of the key value about Zeus Connect is not only that it provides the runtime environment to provide you the connectivity, right? But one of the key thing about Zeus Connect is there's a no coding development pattern. So when you're using Zeus Connect, you don't have to write a single line of code. So you don't have to worry about whether you have Java skills, COBOL skills, and whatsoever. In most cases, right, Zeus Connect can use what we call the API toolkit, such that you just import your like your IMS, COBOL copybooks and artifacts that will generate the the runtime artifacts behind the scene to help you to handle the RESTful API call. And in the case of the call out, right, we will generate like copybooks from your Swagger document for external API, such that it just make the whole development experience much easier. And that kind of echo back in things that we have heard from our customer as well. So here is a sample of some of the success stories. Many of them has been adopting Zeus Connect in production for some of them has been doing that for a number of years. And one of the key things I do want to highlight is in most of these customers' cases, they already have some other alternative solution for developing API in the company, but they still choose Zeus Connect. A lot of times it's because of the ease of use. So in one case, we have heard from one company that they have this mainframe application that remains very old-fashioned, traditional 3270 screen way. They didn't actually modernize that application, not because they don't have the technology to do it, because they have their own, Java solution that can use some of the other product. They can still write their own code to write APIs to access the IMS trend. But because of the whole development process that they need to do all the coding, testing, and they have made changes like with some of the MQ access they have to do in multiple places. It will be an easy 6 to 9 months project just to automate and transform that application. So that's why that application is still remain in the old-fashioned way. But after they kind of look at the CS Connect product, because it is more driven from a tooling perspective, it cut down the need of any of the coding development. They are able to actually spin up a POC to modernize that transaction very easily. So that's one other thing I do want to highlight is not only does CS Connect provide the the technology or the solution for helping you to get the transaction data to be exposed as API, but also it helped a lot from a development cost perspective because we provide a lot of generated code and also tooling to help you to make that happen. Okay, so I'm going to take a pause here just to see whether there's any specific question about API.
No one's typed in any questions yet. So let's see if anyone does.
All right, so I'm going to continue to the next session. This is about Java. Java is very interesting. The reason why I say it's interesting because we have more than 15 years of support of Java in IMS as well as the SQL support. But many of our customers either didn't know about it or they are reluctant to use it for many reasons. And a lot of the benefit from a Java perspective, and here what I specific about Java is, either allowing you to have your Java application to access your IMS data directly or having Java to actually run inside of IMS and on the mainframe. And I think when we first have the Java solution on the IBM Z, it is not a very, ready to be used solution. There are pain points in terms of usability, for performance, for kind of like, the workload, the path length. It's just little, hiccups here and there. And so some of the customers tried it and they decided not to use it. But what we have seen is things has been changed a lot. Now, Java, we all know there are many Java developers in the marketplace, right? There are 14 million or now even more Java developers. So from a skills perspective, it is a good thing to use Java because when you're looking at supporting your application from a long-term, IMS application from a long-term, you want to make sure that you still have the skill set to be able to maintain your application, right? And then from the kind of other angle, what we have done from an IBM perspective, we have done a lot of work on Java, optimizing Java on the IBM Z platform, right? So I can probably say, IBM Z is one, if not the most efficient platform for running Java workload because every single Java JVM release, we actually dedicate a resource to look at how we can get the Java optimized and run better on the IBM C platform. And we have been, IBM have been doing that for the past 10 years or so. So there are kind of the key values for running Java on System C, right? Is co-location. If your data is on IBM Z, it will be much better off if you have your application also running on the IBM Z such that it just makes things a little bit easier, right? You don't have to worry about going to the network. There are any, failures during the transmission and stuff like that. So co-location is key. You can take advantage of our specialty engines to offload your Java workload, right? And also it's just easy to find skills to work on a Java application versus some other traditional IBM C mainframe programming languages. Right. And so there are a couple of Java running on C and IMS. There are a couple of solutions that you can adopt today. As I mentioned, we support Java for many years. We have, specialized IMS region, right, that you can deploy. Inside IMS, we have the JMP and JPP that allows you to run Java workload within IMS, right? And then if you are using a Java application server, you can have, for example, Web3 Liberty running on Z and actually access your IMS data as well through our Java and SQL support, and same thing from Kix as well. So that's kind of what we have seen, and it's very interesting to see that we are start getting more requests from our customers. So I have to say, other than the API, which is one of the most common or popular modernization pattern that I've seen for the past couple of years, Java is getting the close second, especially for this year and last year. Most of the new requests that we got for helping in customer in terms of modernization and transformation, we got a lot of requests from for doing Java, because I think our customers start getting into realization is having them to be able to modernize existing IMS transactions, I mean IMS application in Java is actually a good thing for a long term, right? And a lot of your application today that you have in COBOL and PL1, um, you may have to extend it, right? And that's why there are kind of new use case that we have seen in terms of how our customer has been adopting Java on the Z platform. So in terms of how you're using Java within the IMS engine itself, we have seen two patterns. One is extending your existing IMS application with Java, meaning that you may have a COBOL application currently deployed in an MPP region, right? Now you have a new business need for a new logic. Instead of extending that existing IMS COBOL application with the new business logic written in COBOL, some of the customer would now choose to actually implement in Java, right? Just a new subroutine in Java, and have the existing COBOL application calls to your Java routine just as a subroutine, right? And get the data back. And so the advantage is now you can kind of slowly, as a transition step, to get more and more new logic with the new programming language that are easier to support in the long term. Some of the customer are also using it as a transition for maybe rewriting some of the routines, right? And then starting to implement in the newer programming language that are easy to find skills. And also they're looking for helping to address maybe from the cost perspective, because some of them may have a CPU intensive routine that is currently implementing COBOL. So by converting that into Java, that they can take advantage of the zip offload, the specialty engine, right? So it's depending on the use case, and that's sort of what the customer is starting to do. Some of the other customers, they kind of decided that yes, mainframe is our platform that we are remaining on, but I want to make sure that the application will be more maintainable for future. So they start actually converting the existing COBOL application in Java and keep it to run on the mainframe, right? To leverage of all the IBM Z services, all the quality service that you got in terms of security, reliability, right, and the performance that you're getting. So you will now have a new modern application that you can use and easy to maintain, but also still getting all the benefits for your IBM Z platform in terms of the runtime and performance. So here's a performance chart that I want to use as a sample. As I mentioned, we have done a lot of work in optimizing Java on IBM Z, and this is actually part of the result. And this is not even the latest, version of the IMS that we run the test. So when we actually did a test in IMS with IMS 14 and Z14, you can see with a JMP workload, we'll be able to achieve more than 25,000 transactions per second, right? So this is actually just a fact to show it to you that at this stage it was very different from 10 years ago. The Java support on System Z and in IMS is definitely production ready, right? So we're really encouraging our customer to take a look at it to kind of leverage some of the benefit for the Java platform running on Z.
Haley, I've got a couple of questions for you.
Sure.
Okay, first one then is how do we extract the business logic from Kix COBOL into Java when accessing IMS databases?
Okay. There are a couple things that you can do. I'm not an expert in the area. There are some tools that I'm aware of. It calls ADDI, that is one of the tool that IBM that can actually help you to do code analysis and source scan that will be able to actually identify the different modules, right, within the application. Because one thing that I know in most customer cases, they have pretty sophisticated application, since most of this application may be running in your system for the past 30, 40, or even 50 years. So the tools like ADDI will be able to help you, because not only that it can do a code source scan to look at all the dependency of your application, but also be able to kind of generate a map of all the the logic per se. So that will be one of the things that I think are going to help you to kind of helping you to visually, right, easier to locate your business logic within the your application. Now, if you're interested, feel free to send me an email afterwards. I could hook you up with some of our expert in that area, and I know that we have field expert that can help our customer to look at to help out in that specific areas. And whether there's any additional tools can you help you to do more automated ways on extracting some of the logic, I can get you to the right expert to address that.
Right, thank you.
All right. Any other questions?
No, that's it. It's just a clarification that was for API use, the extracting the business logic.
Right. Yeah. And I have a actually I know one of the colleague that they have a demo that specifically showcase how with the ADDI tool and the Zeus Connect tool, right? So if you're looking at identify the business logic that you can actually enable as an API, there are tools and we have some demos that actually can show our customer on how to do it.
Okay, just got a couple more questions. They're coming in now. API to IMS data requires DVM, or does it not require it anymore?
It does not require DVM. DVM is the only solution in the past, but since we have the new solution, what we call the IMS Database Service Provider, in March, now you can use that new options for accessing your IMS data from an API directly. The IMS Database Service Provider is a solution that is included in the Zeus Connect product. From an IMS perspective, it does require you to have the IMS Open Database Manager, the ODBM component, IMS Connect, and also the IMS catalog to be set up on your IMS side.
Okay, great. Karen Tish is asking, what is SMT?
SMT. Oh, in this chart. Good question. I'm a little bit embarrassed because actually I don't know. I don't know the full name of it. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have that information in front of me. Sorry about that. One thing that I would recommend is there are a lot of the details in terms of how the performance runs and kind of the criteria and the setup in the link that I show in the chart. So if you go into the link in the chart, you should be able to get you the information.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So to close out the Java topic, I just want to share, again, we have success stories with our major key customers in those areas for adopting Java. One thing that I do want to highlight, especially with our solution with the Fiduciary GAD, they actually adopted a solution to extend existing COBOL application, putting Java. They actually built a whole Java framework with that. And they actually developed a red book that described all the details of what they have done. And this is a project they have done in 2-3 years ago. And so there's a lot of technical details of kind of what they went through in terms of using Java as part of the key modernization strategy with IMS. So for those of you that are interested, again, what I would do is I will update this chart and put a link to that white paper. We have actually customers just follow that white paper or red book and actually replicate the success from fiduciary GAD. So again, for those of you that want to kind of look at the technically what they have gone through, I highly recommend to look at that red book. It's a really long one, but they have all the nitty-gritty details, and it has been we are still kind of working with them very closely, right? And that is one of the things that I will mention at the very end is, we as an IBM and especially from the IMS team, we want to make sure that you have success because your success means our success as well. So a lot of these modernization projects we know it's not easy to get started. There are so many options and solutions out there. And so we can actually come in to help you as well. And we have some free offerings on how to help to get started that I'm going to get to at the end of the presentation. Okay. So let me move on to IMS, the open database. The open database part, yes.
Sorry, Haley, just before you go on, Roger Suhr and Thomas Esser have suggested SMT is simultaneous multi-threading or perhaps multitasking, but yeah. So that's what it stands for.
Thank you, Thomas. Okay, so now I'm kind of moving into the open database. Actually, the open database and the Java solution, they are kind of very closely interrelated, right? So we talk about providing Java access to, within IMS itself, right, and access the data. We also have a lot of our customers very interested in accessing IMS database directly, right, from a distributed platform. And so we do provide a solution again, many years ago. And a lot of use case is, I would say in this three key use case, right? Making your IMS data more accessible, because traditionally you can only access your IMS data through a transaction, whether it's a kick transaction, is an IMS transaction. But there has been like new use cases that we have heard on customers is they may want to get into a piece of data, right? Maybe just a couple of fields within an IMS segment, and they want to be able to access things as like a read-only mode easily. So instead of that, you have to kind of develop a whole transaction, a combo transaction to kind of wrap around that. We provide you the capability to directly access that piece of data in some of the simple use cases. We have also heard a lot of customers still using ETL in terms of data access, meaning that they need to have that piece of data access data, but because they don't know how to access directly from distributed to the mainframe, they tend to replicate that data, right? Offload that data to some other distributed database in order to access it. So that kind of create problem. First of all, you have to go into this ETL processes that you have to maintain is pretty expensive. And then also the second one is the data is not up to date, right? Because they tend to have this ETL process maybe at the end of the day. So when you kind of replicate data on the stream platform, you're actually using data one day old. And so that's why with the open database solution, right, is give you instant access. So many of customers actually looking at open database and realize that now they can actually eliminate or reduce the ETL process because they will be able to easily access the IMS data from the distributed platform. So when we talk about this solution, there are a couple of components I want to highlight, right? So what we do provide in the open database solution is we provide a Java, right, as the programming language that you can send it SQL calls by utilizing our JDBC support or DLI calls from a Java application to access to IMS data. So that will kind of go through our IMS Connect component, the OTBM component, and be able to access to IMS data instantly at real time. So there's no ETL, no offload, nothing involved. It's just like access your IMS transaction. Now you can access the IMS data directly, and then you can use like a SQL statement, which I'm going to show in the next chart, right? So we provide SQL support. So from your Java application, you can do, select, insert, update, and delete as if you are accessing any, relational database. You can use this pretty much the same SQL statement to access your IMS data from those Java application. And as for IMS 14, we are start looking into supporting DDL. We still have a journey to have the full support, but basically what we are looking from a SQL support perspective, we are providing an interesting industry standard for both data access and also for data definitions and administrations, right? So that's kind of our long-term goal. We want to provide you standard interface that allows you to access, use all the skills that you can easily find in the marketplace to be able to support your IMS, not just the transaction, but also for your data as well. Okay. And the open database solution can be used in your Java, your application, but it also has been a foundation in many of our IBM tooling solution in terms of, analytics and some of the machine learning and so forth. So some of the JDBC drivers that actually has been using behind the scene for some of the IMS data solution. And we have customer success story as well. So these are the two samples that I pulled in. And again, pretty much the customer echo back, the value add of the IMS database solution is now they will pretty much open the door for a more easy, fast access to IMS data, right? So they can use SQL to access the IMS data. They can build their own tooling and start aggregating their own data in a standardized format. So a lot of customers is looking into the IMS Open Database solution as well. Okay, so I have about 15 minutes, so I think that's good. Before I move on to my last topic, I just want to see if there's any other questions in terms of Open Database.
Yes, hang on. With the SQL and IMS Connect, is there a PSB involved anywhere?
Yes. Pretty much you still have a connections that you have to associate with your PSB. So you still kind of control the view of your database, right? Even with using the SQL and JDBC solution. So as part of the application, when you wrote to access the IMS data directly, you have to actually make a connection to your PSB.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Sorry, go.
Yeah, and then one thing that I want to highlight because there are customers at times that worry about opening the database to pretty much everyone can use it. And so first of all, accessing to your IMS data is pretty much the same control as if you are accessing the IMS data from an IMS application because we leverage all the security, infrastructure, right, for your IMS data access. So even if you're accessing a distributed platform, you have to provide the RACF or self user ID, right, to make your connections to your IMS data through IMS Connect. So you can put in all the security control there. As usual, all the access control versus like authentication on the IMS Connect side. The other thing second thing I want to highlight as well is some of our, especially for DBAs, they worry about the application developer that they are going to write, SQL statement that do bad stuff that will impact the performance of the IMS database. So we actually have tools that will allow you to do kind of like add in like a review process with your developer. So the developer can write up a SQL statement. They can actually put in the tool. It will generate the DL1 calls that's going to execute at the IMS side. So you can actually see how our driver can take the SQL statement and what kind of DL1 calls, like all the SSA being used when it's actually running at the IMS database side. So if something is not good, right, as a DBA, then you can communicate that with the developers and say, okay, this SQL statement is not good, so please change it or whatever. So we can actually put in those review process in place. And then one key thing is we also put in gates inside the JDBC driver, our SQL solution itself. So anything that we know is not going to be efficiently able to run on the IMS database platform, we're going to reject it. So if you're trying to data span across multiple hierarchy and doing like complex crazy joins, and we know that it's not going to perform well for your IMS database perspective, we're going to actually give the developer an error and say you cannot actually do this particular SQL. So from a engine perspective, we also put in additional gate just to make sure that we can help you to make sure that that the SQL statement that your developer is using is not going to be wild and crazy. So make sure that we still maintain that the quality and performance for your IMS database. All right. Sorry,
Okay.
long answer to that question, but I think those are good things to highlight as well.
Okay, next question then. Open database. Does it require IMS catalog?
Yes, it does. With a caveat. We highly recommend IMS catalog, and as most of our IBM IMS customer knows, right, that's kind of a long-term goal anyway. So if you're going to get started any project, I highly recommend that you put in the IMS catalog in place. But if you're using actually the DR1 driver, there is some workaround that you don't need to, there's some workaround that you can get started without the IMS catalog, but that means also additional work. So I'm not going to highlight a solution, but there are capability to do it. So if you have like a project that you really want to get started and start playing with some of these this work, but you don't have the IMS catalog to be enabled in plan for maybe like a couple months later, those are the things that we can help you to see what we can help you to get started. So there are some workaround solution, but in general, in some of the solution that we do require the IMS catalog, in some of the use cases that there may be some workaround available.
Moving on, David Peel said, you helped me a few years ago and I wanted to know what additions, sorry, I've lost that again. What additions would be needed? So do you have any slides that show the particulars for the SQL?
Hi, David. I could provide you with some of the updates, but I think what we have is we do have some of the SQL update in the past few years or so, and I would have to say this solution is very kind of mature as well. There are some additional requests from our customer in terms of some of the kind of data manipulation, working on some of the arrays, for example, that we actually put in some new enhancement in the past few months to address that so that the customer will have some sort of more flexibility on how they can manipulate the data coming back from the driver. So let me kind of dig into it, and maybe I could share. Maybe I could put some links into this presentation, or I can send it to you directly, because those are pretty much also documented in our documentation. I just can put in some link to just help you to easily find it. But at a high level, right, our solution is, for the open database access, that you will need the IMS Connect, ODBM catalog, right, and the JDBC driver, and we have samples out there to get started. Those hasn't changed. Those, as I say, has been a pretty stable solution. But there are some of the enhanced area in terms of data mapping that we have heard from our customer that we have addressed in the last year or so.
Okay, well, David Peel has just given me his email address, so I'll pass it on to you at the end of this session then, Haley.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's all the questions. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Okay, so moving on to DevOps Cloud. Now, I have to say this is one of the we have a lot of new exciting work in this environment, right? And as we kind of have seen a shift in terms of the interest in modernization and transformation, we started off with how can you modernize and transform your existing application and data, right, to make it more open and easily accessible, whether using SQL, using Java, whether using APIs, right? And we're kind of looking at your existing business workload or existing application data. But when we talk about the DevOps and cloud, this is kind of a different area, right? We're talking about how we can actually transform and make your infrastructure and also improving the overall experience on working on or developing, making changes, promoting the changes in the environment in terms of your application and data itself. So there are two kind of areas that I want to highlight. One of them is called the cloud native experience. So if you compare a ZOS developer today, if you look at the tools that they use to develop a ZOS application versus a developer on the cloud platform, the tools and the experience they used for developing a cloud application, it is very different, right? So one of the key pain points that we all always heard from our customer is it's so hard. Mainframe requires so many special tools and skills. So if I have a new developer come bringing on board, they have to learn so much things before they can even get started on building the application. And the process for promoting those changes, and again, it requires a lot of very mainframe specific tools. I just cannot integrate those processes into what the cloud platform uses today, right? So I always have this two distinct experiences of tooling that I have to maintain in my whole IT and application infrastructure, right? So, so that kind of is a big pain point because it will slow down and especially for the slow down the whole development process or the promotion application deployment delivery process, and also it slowly become a big impact because if I have a new application to develop, right, and if I have a developer that is coming from the cloud platform, they will easily choose something that I'm more familiar with, like in terms of the IDE, the tooling, the processes. So they're going to deploy the application running in the cloud. Now, but the data itself is still sitting on the IMS side, or the transaction is still sitting on IMS side, right? So all of a sudden you have these hybrid application, which is good. Hybrid application is good. But in some cases, it's probably going to make more sense to have the application actually running on the Z platform because of the co-location. So it's much more efficient in some cases to actually have that application instead of running on the cloud that you have to go through the TCP/IP stack to access the data on the IBM Z, right? If you deploy it running on mainframe, it's just more efficient. You can still API enable it so that it can access by the client. So there's sort of what I've seen is, especially for the past few years, sometimes the application deployment is based on some reasoning that may not be most efficient. They deploy or they create an application on this platform just because it's just easier to develop, right? Just because of the tooling for the developer is more available or just more familiar with them, right? So one of the big uh, kind of or strategy that we want to focus on is we want to provide the same experience that a cloud developer use. We want to provide it to for your ZOS developer as well. So for your new developer that you're coming on board on Z, they should experience the same thing. They should be able to use the same tooling to develop their major application. So it's going to be no difference. They don't have to have deep dive skills to work on an application, and they should be able to have the tooling of their choice, right? And also the other part of it is talking about the development experience, but how about the environment, the infrastructure, right? So if they work on, let's say work on an application, now they have to get an environment to test it. Most of the time the developer has to work with the system programmer, the administrator, right? That they have to have a dedicated region or some kind of naming convention such that they have their own transaction program. So when they actually test it in a shared environment, right, you have a dev test output that is shared by many developers, they're not going to override from each other, right? And so sometimes it takes time to set up the infrastructure, right? When especially there's a lot of requests for different developers. And a lot of times this developer has to learn how to interact with that, output, sending in like IMS command to bring up and down the regions. And so we're kind of looking at what if we can provide you, the developer, right, your own dev test environment that is your own copy of things that you're not going to be impacting others. And they can actually bring it down, up and down, just like any of the cloud, components today, right? So when they need it, they kind of click on a button, provision an environment that has everything they need, including the application and data, and then they can test the application changes After they are done, they check in the application changes into SCM, and then they will have the pipeline to run to develop, to kind of compile the application and deploy to an environment for the kind of integrated testing, right? So that's kind of like the ideal world is now they're all self-sufficient in terms of application the development and deployment. Everything will be kind of automated. They don't have to wait for other people to help them out to do some of the work. So that kind of captured in all these four boxes that you can see in the chart as an example, right? How we can support a better user experience in terms of a hybrid multi-cloud environment, self-provisioning, that they are self-empowering their own environment for development, how they can actually get the application changes into an end-to-end enterprise DevOps pipeline, such that they don't have to rely on specific, mainframe tool. They can actually promote the changes into Git, into Jenkins, and this will be the same pipeline that can run to promote your COBOL applications or your Java application or cloud application. It will just have the same processes in place, and also be able to use the operation tools and monitoring tools that can help you to see whether your changes is going to impact from a performance perspective in the early stage. That's what they call the shift left operations, right? So a lot of these are what we are kind of targeting uh, as a long-term vision and goal. And I'm going to share with you, I know I'm kind of running out of time, but share with you a few highlighted areas that we actually just ship and have it available, or is going to be available very soon. So, so let me kind of go through this slide very quickly, right? So, what I kind of highlight earlier in terms of using some example, this is one of kind of our vision, right? We want to be able to help you to be integrating your ZOS application deployment processes into an automated pipeline that can cross, multiple platforms. So whether you can use a similar pipeline that you do for the cloud, you can use the same pipeline for mainframe application that can help you to do, better SCM integration, IDE, right, remote debugging, build and test, provisioning, right, insight, and also deploy. And the key part is you can now use any of the modern tools in your of your choice, that including the open source tools as well. So there are a couple of things that we're looking at. So first of all, I'm going to highlight a few things from a developer perspective. So this is more from your developer, right? So we are having one of the new product that we announced actually in May, and it's going to be generally available very soon, is the WASI Red Hat Code Ready Workspaces, right? So this is a new offering that allows you to be able to provide you a sandbox as well as the tooling of your choice, whether you're using Microsoft, Visual Studio Code, using Eclipse tools, or even using Red Hat Code Ready to be able to develop your COBOL application, your mainframe application, and also have a sandbox environment that is pre-built for you, which is kind of based on our ZD&T technology, such that to achieve that self sufficient, right, point that I highlighted, right? So I'm going to show you kind of screen captures of some of these. So you now will be able to use the tooling of your choice. You don't have to be locked down to have to use ISPF or any of the traditional mainframe tooling, but you can use Eclipse. You can still use IDZ if you have one, Visual Studio Code, or even the IDE that is integrated with Red Hat OpenShift, and be able to work on your COBOL application. You can see it's all syntax, checked and highlighted. And within this tool, you can actually edit the code. You can do a user build, right, a local compile. You can also do remote debugging. So I could actually step through the code and be able to debug with an IMS transaction online within any tool of your development tool of your choice. Pretty much that's three that I highlighted, right? And we also have the sandbox available. So if you do have the Red Hat Code Ready, the Red Hat environment, we can now allow you to be able to create a sandbox, which is an encapsulated CDNT environment that already have ZOS, IMS, DB2, ZOS Connect on it, right? So without having you to worry to set up an environment or having it a shared out part that are going to be shared with everyone, now a developer will have a sandbox environment on their own that be able to develop their work. So I'm not going to cover all the details, but if you guys are interested in this new offering, let us know, and I will be able to get the expert in there, and we can do a lot of demos in the area. This is so new. As I say, it just announced recently, and I think this is a game changer solution in terms of improving, right, providing the cloud native experience for your developers and also even for the dev test environment. This is very key. The other thing that I want to touch on is Red Hat. So I show a lot of things which are not Ansible. I show a lot of things about Red Hat, but Ansible is one of the very common automation utility, right, that we have seen in the marketplace. It is so dominant. Many of our customers use Ansible as their automation platform for many of things. And so one of the things that we actually make available since March is a sort of a content from IBM C, meaning that now you can use Ansible to automate your for doing IT, IT infrastructures, automations for System Z. And here are some of the use cases that I want to mention. So you can use Ansible for managing many of the COS use cases in terms of provisioning, configuration management, security automation, even application deployment and orchestration. And again, just another chart that kind of go through is you can have your Ansible control node and be able to submit all these Ansible playbooks and jobs to manage your ZOS environment. And let me just show you some highlight of what we have today. We have a couple collections. These are Ansible modules that we actually deliver and is available to you, and you can find it in both Galaxy and also the Automation Hub. And so you can now, what that means to you is I will be able to use Ansible as my automation solution, right, to interact with your IBM, the mainframe platform. So for example, using the ZOS collection, I could, submit a job through Ansible. So this is an example, if your enterprise has been using Ansible as the automation platform, you can now starting to integrate, right, the ZOS automation in your enterprise to normalize the skills. So instead of having your developers or your administrator that has to learn JCL for some of those automation, now they will have a common set of tools to be able to do automation on the Z platform as well. So that is one option. Now, what we see is kind of in a mixed mode, right? This is a part of a transformation journey. So you can also use Ansible in terms of orchestration. So if you already have your automation on the mainframe side, but there are some new automation requirements in place, you can start using Ansible to orchestrate existing, automation on your ZOS like JCL and things like that, and have created some new automations for your platform as well. So is the list for the core collections that we provide, and we also have the IMS collection as well. So this is, for example, use cases. If I'm a developer, then I have to, let's say if I have to restart an IMS region after I make an application code change, I could use the IMS command modules to submit an Ansible, task or playbook to actually restart my, IMS region so that my application will be pick up right away. So instead of me as a developer, I have to log onto an ISPF to submit a job. Now I can use Ansible to actually do the work, which is something that I'm more familiar because I'm a developer. You can also use the DBD, PSB, and ACB Gen to help you to promote an application change as well. So those are things kind of like another options for helping you to kind of adopting these new skills in terms of automating the platform. So I know at this point I'm really run out of time, and so I'm going to take a pause there. But I do want to share one last chart because this is my offering to all of you all the audience is the program that I call IMS Makerspace. So again, as I highlighted earlier, this is a program that we focus on education and also co-create, and it's free to all our audience, right? So if you're an IMS user, IMS customers that you want to do more modernization, I'm sure that you already have done some, but if you want to do more transformation, you don't know where to get started, what are the solutions available to you, or what are things that actually fit you better, we can bring in the SMEs to help you to get started, right? And also not just getting started from a POC perspective, but also helping you to drive to the end goal, which is the production, and keep it in any of these areas or even Ansible as well. And we used to conduct this workshop, on site, but we can also deliver that in virtually online as well. And so again, if you're interested in any of the transformation project and then you want our team to come and help, let us know. Feel free to contact me with my email on the first chart, and then we can get the conversation started. Okay, I apologize that I kind of rushed through the last part, but there's a lot of new information. I think those are the ones that we can have a separate conversation and more deep dive for the area that you are interested.
Okay, I do have a question from Joan Keemel. She says, WASI, does it require Linux on Z or Linux One, or can it be leveraged somehow in ZCX?
CX. Good question. I know it's not dictated on Linux on C, that I'm pretty sure. I think it's just any Linux environment as well, but X6 I don't know. I have to actually find that out. Yeah, good question there. Let me just write that down. And if you can leave your contact information, if you don't mind, then I could get back to you with the answer after I talk to the expert in that area.
Okay. We got another one. The last presentation I was in, they demonstrated creating the SQL in IMS Explorer and then copy paste into ZOS Connect.
Yep.
IMS Explorer does not require IMS catalog. So Ken Blackman was going to investigate why ZOS Connect required IMS catalog.
Yes, it does require, but for the ZOS Connect solution for API database access, we do require the catalog. And that's for a number of reasons. One of the key reasons is because when we are using, that pretty much an explore capability, right? And from API capability, it is more a tooling driven use case. So we do need to have the metadata that we can actually capture behind the scene to actually get it to work. Now, if you're using the open database from a more Java programming perspective, that you're writing your own code, then that was one of the things I mentioned earlier as a kind of workaround, because you can actually do some coding to manipulate some of the data, right, in that fashion. So there are more flexibility that we can actually work around some of the catalog requirement, but it's just more work for you as well. And that's why in general, I highly basically say in some of the solutions, especially with ZOS Connect and Explore, we will need the catalog information to be in place such that it can allow you to exploit some of the metadata in a more easy fashion.
Okay, we've just got a reminder that ZCX is all to do with containers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just seeing if we've got any more questions coming in. No? Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for that, Haley. That was quite a rush through loads of useful information. So thank you very much for that. Because we're a virtual user group, can you assume we're giving you a virtual round of applause at this time? People are typing in very good presentation, and people are typing the word applause. Right, I will take control back now.
Yeah, and I just want to make a last comment. And again, if there's any topic, right? I mean, this is part of an introduction. If there's any of the topic that you're still confused or you're interested in more, dive in, please let us know. Or maybe I could come back with another presentation, just focus on one area and provide additional demos to showcase some of our solution that I mentioned. This presentation is just intent to kind of let you know what is out there and what direction that we're going with, and we'll be really excited that we can actually deep dive into some of the specific areas for you as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the offer. And we've already had people wondering whether you could possibly do something on Ansible for us. So, yeah, I'll get back to you. I'll email you after the presentation and talk to you about that. Okay, let's... Very quickly then, news. You may have seen that Advanced Software Products Group have got Mega Encryption 6.5. There's our cryptographic toolkit. New is IMS cryptography, which provides IMS users with cryptography to protect their mainframe databases. So it might be worthwhile looking at that. There's a link to the press release on our website. In terms of articles, we've got IMS Solution Packs Have Diverse and Needed Functionality by Joseph Guller in IBM Systems Magazine on the 3rd of June. We've got Announcing the New IBM ZOS IMS Collection to Manage Middleware Components Using Ansible by today's speaker, Haley Fung, and that's on IBM Z and Linux One Community. We've got IMS Systems Management with a Single Product Suite, again by Joseph Guller, and again on IBM Systems Magazine. There's Securing Diagnostics for IMS by Sanjay Kalyur on Z Systems Developer Community. And IBM Kicks and IMS Support Leading Edge Development by Joseph Guller, again on IBM Systems Magazine. Keep Your IMS COBOL Applications Thriving, that was by Sandy Sherrill on IBM Developer Blog. And there's Assessing IBM IMS OSAM Encryption Performance by Jasdeep Singh on Z System Developers Community. And Pushing the Limits of Modern Security, OSAM Encryption by Sanjay Kalyur on Z Systems Developer Community. And the links to all these articles are on our website. Feedback requests then, you can email me your comments. My address is on screen, or you can use the Contact Us page on our website. Looking to the future then, our next meeting is on the 11th of August. We've got Nick Griffin from BMC speaking, and he's talking about implement IMS analytics for better business outcomes. And the meeting after that to put in your diary is 6th of October, and we've got Dusty Rivers from GT Software back, and I'll tell you what he's speaking about when we meet again. Oh yeah, can I remind you that you can keep up to date with what's happening in the world of IMS and the virtual IMS user group by following us on Facebook and Twitter, and you can also join the virtual IMS group on LinkedIn. The URLs, well, they're on screen now, but they're also on the home page of our website. And as usual, can I ask you for likes on Facebook? Everyone likes likes. And if you tweet or anything, then the hashtag to use is hashtag virtual IMS, or one word. So that's all for this meeting of the virtual IMS user group. Can I thank you all for attending? Thanks to Rocket Software for sponsoring our user group. And I particularly want to thank Haley Fung for today's excellent presentation. So that's it. Thank you all very much for joining the meeting, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the 11th of August. So thank you all and goodbye.